Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this end of day chat for the Health and Medicine Day for All About That Place. I've been very kindly given the opportunity to have a chat with Janice, Elsa, and Joan, who are all contributing with their talks on the day. And my name is Jude Rhodes. I'm here to kind of have a chat with these lovely speakers. And I'm here on behalf of the British Association of Local History, who are sponsoring the Health and Medicine Day. So let's introduce ourselves. Janice, over to you.
Hi, my name's Janice Nicod, and for my talk at All About That Place, I was speaking on behalf of A Few Forgotten Women, which is a research group devoted to researching and presenting the stories of marginalised or otherwise forgotten women.
Fabulous. So interesting, a fabulous group. And Elsa.
Hello there, my name's Elsa Churchill. I'm the genealogist at the Society of Genealogists, and my talk for All About That Place was about the 18th century philanthropic hospital movement, why so many hospitals were created in London and provincial towns, what led to them, what records there may be. It was part of a course I was running for the Society on researching your 18th century ancestors, and this was kind of like a chapter highlight that I could show to people about some of the amazing records which are underused at that period.
Oh, I can't wait to hear all about it when the day comes. Just in case people wondering why I'm talking in the future, we are pre-recording this chat. Oh, thanks, Elsa. And Joan.
Hello, my name's Joan Reid, and the talk that I've produced for the Health and Medicine Day is actually about a place called Broadgate Hospital. It's a small piece from a larger piece of work that I'm doing for the Family and Community History Research Society, fondly called Thatchers. And in 2020, they launched the Asylum Major Project, and I'm one of the people involved in steering that, and currently putting together a booklet based on the first phase of the research. And I was particularly interested to use Broadgate Hospital, which is the East Riding of Yorkshire's County Pauper Lunatic Asylum, because I was born in the East Riding and I'd absolutely never heard of it until I started work on this project. So I always find it's exciting to come up with something that you didn't know about and you can go and have a good ferret.
Oh, that's fabulous. Fabulous, Joan. I'm also researching an asylum for Thatchers. Also in Yorkshire, and I confess I hadn't heard of Broadgate, even though the retreat in York is so well known. So yeah, again, super talk. What I was thinking was, with health and medicine, we so often think of that relating to people, and of course it relates to people, but it also relates to the different buildings, the different institutions that you've already alluded to, the specialist hospitals, asylums. And it wasn't just the people, the building, but within that building, the people were patients, they were the staff as well. And I wondered if we could have a little bit of a chat about that, if it fits in with your thoughts.
Yes, I think with the hospitals particularly, the foundation of them came about through quite different means, but a few had in common that they had bequests of either land or finance to lead towards it, and then the positioning of the hospital would be often on the outskirts of the town, or wherever the opportunity may be. For example, I used my Kent and Canterbury hospital near where I live in Kent and Canterbury, and the hospital was placed on the grounds of the old former St Augustine's Abbey, because it had been an opportunity of space that hadn't been encroached upon. It was just outside the city walls, and although it was a Canterbury hospital, it was to look after the poor and the infirm of the whole of the county. But Canterbury being blessed with a lot of physicians, it being quite an affluent city, where being a physician in the hospital was quite beneficial to your practice, there were lots of the opportunity to use that land and that place came together. And again, there's so many work which came about through bequests of land and place, and quite often they were considered, that some of the institutions I've looked at were country houses in the town or on the edge of the town. And it's really now, when you could look at, particularly in London, where some of them are so encroached upon and how urban they are, that actually they weren't very urban, but there was this idea of space and away from the town.
Oh, that's such a fascinating point, Elsa, about how, we can't really imagine in overcrowded towns now that areas were rural.
Yes. Yes, the London in Whitechapel being a classic example.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely fascinating. And I love what you say about opportunity. Was it always, philanthropic, or was it, opportunistic? I don't know. Maybe a bit of both.
A bit of both. I mean, we were behind the continent, I believe. That there were some specialist hospitals, particularly for infectious diseases, or which were ahead of us, which were founded much earlier. And in fact, London and England was behind the times. So this feeling that we should be doing this, and we've got people who could come together to, it was to their benefit to found these things.
Yes.
So, yeah. So it
and I think that
was an opportunity for the poor. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that links into your place as well, Joan, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. The East Riding didn't originally have their own asylum. They actually shared the one in Clifton in York with the North Riding, but they sort of got divorced, I think it's probably fair to say. And when they decided to build a new asylum for the East Riding, they basically advertised for sites, and there were 3 things that they were particularly interested in. It should be near a market town, it should have a plentiful supply of water, and be within reasonable distance of a railway station. And they had quite a lot of places to choose from, but they eventually chose somewhere called Broadgate Farm, which is actually between Beverley and the village of Walkington. And they bought a 412-acre site, which they then sold most of it off, so reducing their costs significantly, well, on the site anyway. It was actually built by a local builder from York, which I find quite interesting because he shares a surname with one of my ancestors, although I have yet to find a connection. It's always that annoying thing, isn't it? But the site itself was built, and it opened actually to patients on the 25th of October, 1871. It was described as being in the Italian style. I don't quite know whether or not that's something to commend it or not. It did actually last for quite a long time, but most of it's gone now. Most of it's been pulled down and replaced by housing, which I guess happens to a lot of these places, doesn't it? But it was there and set up originally for 280 patients, and it obviously had a farm. And I guess, Jude, with your investigations into asylum as well, you've come across this notion of moral treatment, which is basically giving them work. Well,
Absolutely.
the farm would have given them some work.
Yes, very moral treatment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that would be good because they'd be outside, wouldn't they? And, a bit healthier than working in the laundry, I guess.
Well, certainly one of the people I've featured as a patient in the little presentation I've done is somebody who was in an asylum. He was in Clifton and then in Broadgate for the best part of 50 years, and he was a farm labourer. So I imagine he was pretty, hopefully, good at what he was doing, but not well enough to leave, sadly.
Oh, yeah, very interesting.
Mm.
So, yes. And, that's fascinating, finding about these places and why they were there. But Janice, social history is so impactful on health, isn't it? It's something I've touched on in my talk, which is about, waste management, basically, but how that impacted on health. And I think, that leads into your area.
Yes, I looked at a Grimsby home. So basically from the sort of 1890s to 1905. And at that time, this particular home was not connected to mains water, so probably had sewerage issues as well. But I was fascinated by why, in a fairly middle class home, two of the three children did succumb to waterborne disease. And I did a fair bit of research on wells and waterborne disease and why some years were worse than others. And it was a study in Liverpool that discovered that if it was a wet summer, so possibly like the one we've had, there was less infantile death because the water table was higher and the wells themselves didn't have all the contaminants and bacteria in such great numbers. So,
Yeah.
therefore, children survived the summer and summer disease. So, the months of sort of May, June, July, August, September, they were the bad months really to have a baby, a small baby, because that was when infantile cholera and gastritis and all these sorts of stomach issues were rife. Whereas today they're totally treatable and we have clean water. In those days, they were a matter of life and death.
Absolutely. We take for granted flushing a toilet, don't we? But that is such a revelation to us all now. And I guess with the wet weather, it would flush through the open sewers and all the waste that was in amongst it, wouldn't it, for a bit of more sanitation?
Yes,
Um,
I think it would. It was the dry summers that were the worst, and the
mm,
people in Liverpool, I think, mentioned that one of the extremes was. I'm just going to have a quick look at my notes. Um, yeah, in 1891 there was 16 inches of rain, which was a very wet summer, and there were only 200 deaths. Whereas in 1895 there was only 7 inches of rain, and there were 819 deaths. So it just
gosh.
that difference that just a few inches of rain makes had a real devastating effect on infant mortality.
Was that generally in urban areas, or was that mortality seen in rural areas as well, do we know?
Um, I'm not. This was a study in Liverpool, which I
Right.
think at the time probably could be generalised to Grimsby because it was a port city and it had a lot of development going on, same as Liverpool. But rurally, I think you were probably more likely to get mothers breastfeeding, and the mortality amongst solely breastfed children was nothing like the bottle fed group.
Yeah.
And I think with my great grandmother being married to a butcher and needed in the shop, I believe she went back to work and therefore the baby had to be bottle fed.
Mhm.
And employing another person, in some places it could be an older child to do the care, meant that maybe bottles weren't sterilised properly, they weren't boiled for as long as they should have been, and the feeds, of course, possibly weren't made up correctly or weren't made up with sterile boiled water, because on the second death certificate, the lady who had been employed as the children's nurse signed it with a cross, which indicated to me that she possibly couldn't read and write. So that might have been part of the issue. But I think if you were due back at work, you had no choice, and it must have been the same whether you were in a middle class home or whether you were due to go back to a factory job.
So interesting, and you know, it's a massive topic, isn't it? Health and medicine, and I'm so, you know, it'll be a fabulous day of talks, and I can't wait to hear so much more about your talks. I will stop the recording now, and we continue our chat. So anybody got anything else they want to add to the fabulous All About That Place Health and Medicine Day?
No, I don't think so. I hope everyone's enjoying the talks and the
Yes.
variety of them, and also people have enjoyed thinking of a topic and saying, "Oh, I can do that." That's been the great thing, is the sheer variety of what we've seen, and everyone taking to it to say, "Oh yeah, I can do that."
Exactly. It's fabulous, isn't it? And thank you to the British Association of Local History for sponsoring the day. Thank you, everybody.